All right, so here we go, guys. Brand new, right off the shelf, fresh off the press, 13-inch radio replacement for your 2014 to 2018 Chevy Silverado GMC Sierra. Guys, all the benefits, all the features and functions that you've ever wanted out of an in-car radio replacement, let me tell you, this thing is loaded. But before we get into features, functions, the installation in this 2018 Chevy Silverado, let's go over all of the harnesses that are included in the kit. So for starters, you're going to get a welcome letter. On that letter, you're going to have information like a phone number, an email address for you to reach out to somebody should you have any questions or concerns regarding the installation, features, functions, or just any general information regarding the installation of this unit. My favorite part about having contact information to reach out to somebody is we're on the same time zone, we speak the same language, and you're talking to somebody who has the industry experience and has had their hands on the development process of this unit. But not just that, they know your vehicle as well. All right, so here are all the harnesses. These are all the additional harnesses that are going to help you expand upon the built-in functions of this radio. Let's talk about the 4 included antennas. 2 of them are for your 4G LTE. You're going to need to plug these in. You're also going to get a GPS antenna. This is in case you want to use Google Maps, CarPlay, or Android Auto. You're also going to receive a Wi-Fi antenna. You could use a SIM card with this unit, or you can give it directly Wi-Fi hotspot from your phone. And the other antenna, not quite an antenna, it's an antenna adapter, is your AM/FM antenna adapter. This is what's going to allow you to go from the factory antenna that gets disconnected from your radio and into the new aftermarket 13-inch radio. You're going to receive 2 different USB input cables. Pay attention to the color, white plug, red plug. The white one is just in case you want to add a USB thumb drive with your favorite music, movies, or videos. The one with the red plug has 2 ends on the other end. One of the ends is to keep your factory USB port charging function still functional. And the USB input on this one is going to have a label that says phone link. This is just in case you would like to do wired Android Auto. This unit has the ability to do both wireless Android Auto and Apple CarPlay, but it has the ability to only do wired Android Auto, not wired Apple CarPlay. That's what this USB input is going to be used for. This here is the microphone, and it includes 2 different mounting options. You can clip onto the A-pillar plastic, or you can stick it directly into the windshield where the A-pillar meets with your ceiling. Now, this is a chime speaker. This is so that all of the audible alerts that come through your instrument cluster are still functional. This is what makes all the magic happen. This is your CAN bus module. This is so that you could retain the factory steering wheel controls, the factory backup camera, so on and so forth. The beauty about a kit like this is you don't need any third-party integration modules to keep all these factory functions. This CAN box allows for that to happen. So you're dealing with one kit, one company, not multiple companies who develop independent kits so that you can integrate aftermarket radios into your factory radio location. The next is the backup camera retention harness. You're going to have a total of 3 camera inputs. There's a rear, there's a front, and there's a side camera. These are additional power wires that are designed to power the additional cameras that you would want to add in addition to your already existing backup camera. You don't need to use any of these other connections, including the wire connections, if all you're doing is you're keeping your factory backup camera. This is called a DVR cable. Really, this is designed to provide power output to additional accessories that you might want to use in the car. You have constant ignition and ground, maximum 4 amp output. This is your auxiliary audio video input if you want to add a rear seat video system to the car, which you also want it to play through this screen. Let's just say you're installing a rear seat video monitor with a DVD player built in. you could take the video output out of that monitor and feed it to the radio up front. Or if you want to use just the auxiliary audio inputs, you can also do that. Next is my favorite harness. Yes, this unit has front, rear, and subwoofer outputs. Guys, you can expand upon the built-in audio output of this unit. You can add your amplifiers through the RCA preamp outputs, which also has your microphone plug input, or you can use the Toslink fiber optic output. Please look it up, find out what this does for you. The fiber optic SPDIF, SPDIF output allows you to connect this head unit to high-end fiber optic DSP processors. Please, let's get educated. Let's learn what this unit could do for you. This adds value to a unit like this. Ask the industry how many other units have fiber optic outputs and preamp RCA outputs. The next harness is this is known as the OnStar audio cable. This is so that you can keep your factory OnStar audio functional. This is where these two connections are going to happen. And last, you're going to have this AC climate control cable. We will show you during the installation process where this cable goes. You are also going to receive two different sets of power harnesses depending upon what your vehicle's factory equipped with. This is for the IOB or base model vehicles that do not have the factory audio steering wheel controls. That kit is going to have a power harness with the gray and brown plugs on it. It's also going to include these two pins so that you can maintain function of the factory backup camera. Now here there will be a printed paper that shows you exactly what to do with those two pins if you happen to have the IOB factory audio system. And this would be for the 2018 and up models equipped with a 7-inch screen. There is a gray connector that you're going to need to find 4 pins. 2 pins will go to 2 of the factory pins on that plug. The other 2 pins are going to go to the other 2 pins on that factory plug. This document explains that to you. And so that's it for the IOB. The other kit that's going to be included inside of this box is just in case you have the higher end models that have the factory steering wheel controls, the dual climate control settings on the cluster. That's going to be the gray and your green plugs. Now inside of this kit, you're going to receive additional harnesses, additional plugs. You're going to have to go directly behind the glove box to gain access to the factory backup camera plug. This is going to be your CD jumper to maintain function of the factory audio system. This also plugs into the factory CD player plug just to keep the 2 data lines connected. Otherwise, you will lose audio. You have this MOST audio cable just in case your vehicle is equipped with a factory BOSE. You will need this plug in addition to a BOSE integration module. This harness, which has, basically it's a T-harness, it's a long T-harness. It has 2 plugs on one side and 1 plug on the other side. This T-harness is going to connect at the steering wheel column. You will need to open the plastics around the factory steering wheel column, disconnect a factory plug from there, plug in this T-harness in there, and then run this cable directly into the back of the new radio, and there will be a mate to this particular plug labeled SWC cable. This is where we tap into the factory steering wheel controls for audio. So now let's talk about included hardware. You're going to receive these 2 wings. These 2 wings are going to snap into the side of the radio once you have the radio mounted onto your dash. This right here is if you have the factory heated seats. All you have to do is pop these blanks out and reinsert your factory heated seat buttons right in there. Now, in addition to these two wings, you're also going to receive these two brackets. These two brackets are going to screw into the back of the radio so that you can mount the radio where the factory screw holes are. You can screw them two at the top and two at the bottom. We also include not four, because you're going to need two screws for one bracket to mount to the radio. You're going to need two more screws to mount the other side of the bracket to the radio. You're also going to get an additional two screws just in case you drop and lose any one of these screws during the installation process. So what we'll do next is we'll show you how to mount these brackets onto the back of the radio. Basically what you're going to do is you're going to get yourself a number 1 Phillips head screwdriver, and that's what we're going to use to put these mounting brackets onto the back of the radio. So what we're going to do is we're going to put the radio face down so that we can show you the back of it. Be very careful when doing this, because you don't want to just take the radio and put it down on its face. You'll run the risk of damaging the buttons that are on the radio if you put it face down. What I normally do is I'll get our content box, I'll put a microfiber over it, and then I'll grab the radio, flip it around, and put the screen down on it. But put it down in a way so that the buttons are not touching the box. Make sure that the buttons are in the air like this and they're not up against the box, or that the radio is not flat on its face being held up by these buttons. You want to make sure that you don't damage those buttons. All right, so we'll take our number 1 Phillips head screwdriver. This is the top of the radio. This is the bottom. The bottom already has these brackets on the side that will mount where the factory screen bezel mounts to. So let me bring this a little closer just so you could see where the bracket is going to go. There is 2 holes right there, and what you want to do is grab your screw, put it on the bracket, drop it down, line it up with So once I put this on, I'll show you where this one is and where the other one is gonna go, just so you can get an idea as to what it is that I'm looking at over here. There goes one screw. Let's get it back out. It helps if you have a magnetic tip. So this is basically what we're looking at here. So this is where the bracket mounts to. This is what the other side looks like. And basically what you're doing is you're grabbing this bracket and you're going to use 2 screws to go directly into there, so that you'll have 2 screws at the top and 2 screws at the bottom, holding this entire piece in place, not just clipping it on. There's actual screws holding it in place. All right, so now that we have both of our brackets mounted and the unit is face down, we're going to talk about the AC climate control cable that we said we were going to discuss later. You're going to notice that there is a plug on the back, on the chassis of this unit. This plug, this harness, has basically 3 plugs on it. One of them says to radio, the other one says to CAN box, and this one says to climate connect. This is where the AC climate control plug that you disconnect from the factory AC climate control panel, that plug is going to plug into here, and the other 2, one's going to go directly into the back of the radio, and the other one's going to go to the CAN box. The CAN box is the CAN bus module we talked about earlier, which is what causes everything to work. This is how this radio communicates with the vehicle's data bus. And that's how the AC climate controls are integrated from what it used to be to what it's going to be now on this new radio. The next function we're going to talk about is this SIM card holder. I know you saw this earlier, but now that we have the radio on its face down, let's talk about this cable. Now, this unit, very unique feature that it has is the ability for you to load a SIM card directly onto it. This means that this radio can have its own data plan so that you don't rely on the slow Wi-Fi hotspot connection that most phones provide. Now, it's also long enough for you to run this to the glove box or the driver's side kick panel, just in case you're not ready to load one in there at the time of installation. You can leave it in an easily accessible location so you can add one later. But there are some details you need to know about SIM card and these head units. Allow us to explain that to you. So there's a couple of things that we'd like to share with you in regards to SIM card. When it comes to a data plan for these units, what's really happening out there today is a lot of these service providers are asking you for a IMEI number. Now, the IMEI number that's inside of these units is unknown to a lot of these Verizon, T-Mobile, AT&T service providers because it's not a Samsung or an Apple unit, so they don't know about these units in their database. So it's basically useless to them. And if you tell them that you're looking for a data plan for a tablet, they're going to ask you for an IMEI number. So it becomes very difficult. It becomes a big hassle to get a SIM card from them. And once you do, you'll load it in there and it may work for a day, it may work for a week, but then after a certain period of time, their system picks up on it being an alien IMEI number and the SIM card stops working. So what we've done is we've partnered up with a rep that'll provide us with SIM cards. We can mail one out to you at no charge, and you'll call them up, they'll go over the different rate plans, and in a matter of 2 minutes, they can have you activated. That's the same for T-Mobile as well as Verizon. So what I have here, or having said that, what I have here is inside of the package, you're gonna see this little SIM card tray. Because what happens is you may have a SIM card laying around on any one of your existing devices that you can pull out and insert into here, because SIM cards really have 3 different sizes. As you could tell, you have the SIM card, which would be considered small. This black frame is a medium-sized SIM card, and then this pink frame here would be a large-size SIM card. Well, this particular unit takes a medium-sized SIM card. So if you have a small SIM card laying around somewhere, you would need to insert it into the medium frame so that it can fit into the SIM card holder. And once you're there, all right, so now that we've talked about SIM card, let's take advantage of this time that the unit is on its face down, and let's go over the plugs directly onto the back of it. You're going to notice that we have the 2 purple plugs. These are your 2 4G LTE antenna plugs. And right over here is your AM/FM antenna plug. This is your GPS antenna. We talked about this being useful just in case you want to use Google Maps, Apple CarPlay, Android Auto, or any other application that requires GPS tracking. This is where that's going to plug in. Over here is your grid of plugs, the grid for all of the different multicolored plugs. Once we go over them, we're going to briefly go over the connections, and we're going to plug everything in so you know where it goes. To the left of it, we have our Wi-Fi antenna connection. Directly below, we have our HDMI output. This allows you to feed the video from this unit onto separate screens. We earlier talked about audio video input. This is going to be our HDMI output. So you have the ability to feed video in both directions, from an aftermarket device into the radio, or from the radio onto additional screens. And to the left of that, we have the main power plug. This is a 15 amp fuse. And over here is the AC climate control plug. We talked about that T-harness earlier. All right, so let's take a few seconds to go over where all of the multicolored plugs are gonna go into. I like to start with all of the different antenna connectors. So during the installation process, what I like to do is I like to mount all the antennas in their places, and we'll show you what good places those can be. And I bundle all of my antenna connections, like the GPS, the two 4G LTE antennas, as well as the Wi-Fi antenna. Because what happens is, if you start with the plugs down here, you're gonna block the antenna connections down there. And when you're doing the install, having access to these plugs makes a huge difference. So I'd like to start with that. So what I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna set these down, and I'll show you the antennas that have this plastic Fakra or this plastic plug. As you could see, they're keyed, so you can't just plug them into whatever you want or any direction that you want. You got to look for the locking tabs that are on the antenna plugs themselves, so that when you go plug it in, it slides right in. Both of these purple plugs have the locking tabs facing out. So there is our locking clip on the purple ones. So there's one. Here's the other one. Here's the GPS. Here's the Wi-Fi antenna. And on the bottom below the GPS antenna plug is our AM/FM plug. And so next, I'd like to go over the multicolored plugs. I like to start at the bottom. That way we have access to the rest of them. And you also want to be very careful, because although these plugs are also keyed, they are very easy if you apply enough force to plug them into the wrong plug. So the off-white goes, the white, solid white, we're gonna start at the bottom with the off-white right over here. Next, it's the white one. And then directly right next to that one is this light blue, which is our OnStar plug. And then we have the gray plug right there. Black is in the upper left-hand corner. Next, we have our fiber optic cable. Then we have this green or cyan DVR power output plug. And the last one is the red one. So this is just for you to get an idea as to what goes where once it comes to installing it into the car. You'll know where these harnesses and connections are made based on how we started at the bottom to where we have it now. And that's where our T-harness is gonna go. And that's it for connections behind the radio. All right, so now that we've gone over all the harnesses, all the plugs, the back of the radio, the brackets, the wings, the different power plugs, let's take everything into the car and go over the installation. So here we are inside of this 2018 Chevy Silverado. One of the things to pay attention to is your climate controls. If you have the auto or dual zone climate controls, you will notice that the settings on the new radio will be different from that of a manual type AC climate control or a single zone AC climate control. So one good common practice to have is If you're doing this for somebody else, obviously, if this is your vehicle, then you know what works, what doesn't work. But if you're doing this for somebody else, you want to make sure that, number one, you're getting audio and that your backup camera works. So you want to put it in reverse. Keep in mind that the factory backup camera in these vehicles is a very low, very poor image quality. So it isn't going to look any better on a new radio just because it's an HD display. The quality of the image through a new display basically is as good as the image quality of the radio. So that's what you're getting as far as a backup camera. We're just checking for functionality. One of the things to keep in mind is these factory backup cameras are of a unbalanced video signal, and every aftermarket screen utilizes a balanced video signal. So a lot of times these backup cameras have a hard time synchronizing with the aftermarket screens. There's a couple of aftermarket manufacturers who make what they call the video noise filter. Sometimes you have to use that. Worst case scenario, you have to use an aftermarket backup camera. But that's the story with every factory backup camera. The idea here is just to make sure that it does work. Put it back in park, your volume, check that the steering wheel control, volume up, volume down works, that you're able to do preset changes. We can see that happening here. And I'm basically pressing the buttons behind the steering wheel controls here to check for those functions. So now that we've got that out the way, we have here the driver's side temperature controls. We have the passenger side temperature controls, and that's known as a dual climate control. If you press the sync button, now they're both going to be the same as the driver. So when you adjust the driver, the passenger side will adjust too. If you adjust the passenger side, the driver's side will also adjust. Or not, just the passenger does. It automatically goes into auto, and the sync turns off when you do that. Now, as far as dash disassembly, you can use a plastic panel removal tool of your choice. I sometimes like to use my hands because with my hands I can tell how much force I'm pulling with, versus with a panel removal tool it's kind of difficult to gauge that. So in this case, we're going to start off with removing this entire plastic trim that goes around the climate and the radio controls with the screen. So I like to start at the bottom, and I like to sort of start prying like this. And I'm going to grab here this panel tool, and I'm going to go down here. And as I'm down here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to twist it. I'm going to twist it like this so that it could pop this plastic on this side. So I'll do this. Now that I've got this bottom piece removed, I now can grip the rest of this trim and slide it out. Basically pop all the clips and do that. And then be very careful when pulling on this, because you don't want to pull on the wrong side and end up breaking this panel. These metal clips basically stayed inside. We're going to disconnect the plugs to where the heated seats, the seat heater controls would be. The plugs are there, but the buttons are not present. So what we'll do is we'll disconnect that one. We'll disconnect this one. And here are all the clips that were holding this panel in place. 4 at the top, 2 in the middle, and 4 more at the bottom. And so depending on how deep the clips that are left behind are, you might want to use a right angle pick tool or a needle nose, or both. It's up to you. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use this right angle pick tool to slide it out, bring it here, do the same thing with this one. They really weren't that far in, so there's the second one, just drop down, and that's how those will come out. Next, you're going to use a number 7 socket to remove 1, 2, 3, 4 screws that are holding this entire panel in place. And these are the 4 mounting locations that the new replacement radio is going to use. You don't need any third-party kits to be able to accomplish that. So what we'll do now is let's take those 4 screws out. Now you should be able to pull this and the entire piece will basically slide out. We'll take that out. And this right here is your AC climate control plugs right here. This is where that one plug is going to go into. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to continue and disassemble the glove box, because that's where our backup camera signal is, and we're going to need the one harness. So see, this right here is going to be what the IO3, IO4, IO6, IO5 family is, with the green and gray plugs. And then we're going to need access to the factory backup camera signal behind the glove box. And we also need to disassemble the steering wheel column to gain access to the plug that's underneath the column here. Now the next couple of shots might be a little shaky, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to be moving the camera around to show you how to disassemble the glove box to gain access to the plugs that's back there with the HMI module, and how to disassemble the steering wheel column so that you can gain access to those plugs. All right, so now let's disassemble the glove box area. What's holding the top part of the glove box in place, as a matter of fact, what's holding a lot of the entire glove box area, top and bottom, is a T15 torque screw. There are 2 up here. There is 2 more down here. So after you removed the 2 T15s on the top, the 2 15s down here, close the glove box, and you're going to want to come down at the bottom. There's 2 more down here. Take those 2 out. They're very easy to identify. So once those 2 are out, you can grab this entire top piece and it basically pulls right out. And so these are the 2 on the bottom that were holding the bottom part of the glove box in place. So that's out. You can grab the top, close it, and that also just pops right out. And this harness here happens to be one of your factory USB inputs. And so what you could do is you can use your plastic pry tool. There are 2 clips, one on this side and one on this side, that's holding the entire USB assembly in place. You can just come in here, slide that open. So what we're gonna do next is we're gonna go from this angle and we're gonna go under so that you could see what it is that we are after. So you'll see all these plugs into the HMI module. One of them is your factory backup camera signal. we're going to be plugging one of the included harnesses in there, and then that harness is going to run all the way through and come out to where our new radio is going to be. Let me show you which harness that is. All right, so we're still down here at the HMI module. The gray plug is the plug that you want access to. It has a locking clip on the top, so you're going to want to grab it with your thumb, squeeze down on the locking tab, and slide it out, just like this. So the harness that's going to plug into that one is the one that is labeled to HMI connect. We're going to grab that gray cable that we just disconnected, and we're going to go ahead and just plug them right in. Trying to do this with one hand is easier said than done. So just like that, made those two. Now we can tape this wire tie off and run our video signal through the back and have it come out to where our new radio is going to go. Now, before we bring our video cable through the back side and out through the radio cavity, let's continue and disassemble this part of the dash. Two number 7 screws are going to hold the CD player in place. Once you pull that out, there is going to be a flat plug that looks like this plugged into it. It's the only thing that's plugged into it. Now, earlier we talked about this harness. There's 2 data wires on that plug that have now basically, the loop has been broken. They go into the CD player. Internally, they make a connection and come back out. If you don't plug this plug into that connector that we just disconnected from the CD player, you will not get any audio. So you want to make sure that you plug that in. So now that we have our radio cavity wide open, we're going to go ahead and basically feed the backup camera video signal through the inside of the glove box and out through this cavity. There really is no right or wrong way of doing this. It's a really short run, so you want to just stick your hand in here and you'll notice that right away you'll have reach, and you've basically would have gotten to this harness, the harness that's holding this in place. So if you reach in here with one hand from the front and the other hand in the back, you can literally touch your fingers and do a handoff. So I'm going to hand off the cable from one hand to the other and pull it out. And once you're done, you could find a good spot to put a zip tie on this cable, just so that it's not dangling out here like this, and it's basically tied up so it doesn't get in the way of the glove box. This is not ultimately where we want to end up. We want to come out of here. So all I do now is feed it back in and do another handoff like this. Now we have our backup camera video cable where we want it. We could reassemble the glove box, or we could leave it like this until we're done with the installation and we verified that everything is working the way it should. I would recommend that we wait until we're done before we start reassembling everything. So now this is the steering wheel shroud. We're gonna need to basically pull these 2 halves apart. And the best way to start that is you gotta remove this handle. And the way you do that is you gotta stick a flathead screwdriver while you hold this handle in place. So you stick your flathead screwdriver in there and you twist it, because you're gonna need to pull it out, so that way you can remove this shroud without this being in the way. And so what you're doing with the flathead is you're squeezing the flathead in between this piece and that piece. So when it's in there, you're literally just sticking it in there and you're twisting it, so that when you have it in here, you just twist it and it'll slide right out. Now let's get the screws from underneath here removed, and we'll be able to split the two halves. Once you have the screws removed from the bottom part, a good spot to start splitting these two halves of the shroud would be right in there. So what you want to do is come from underneath and stick your panel removal tool right there, and then you'll see how it's going to begin to split, and you can work your way to the back like this, and you can do the same thing to the other side, and once they're split you'll be able to remove the bottom out. And so since we have already started disassembling the one side, you'll see how this side is also already starting to split. So what you want to do is, sorry guys, a little shaky here. What you want to do is continue to split this half, and then just twist your panel removal tool as you do that, so that you can get the bottom piece to open. You're going to want to do the same thing back here, like that. Now we're going to find a way to still stick our hands in here to be able to pull this up so that our steering wheel can open up. Drop it down again. There you go. So once you have the back done and your telescoping wheel handle all the way down, you can slide it out, and you'll be able to now release the bottom part of this panel. You might have to drop this here like this to be able to get it to drop down. So the harness and the plug that you're after looks like it's this one right over here. And so get a few zip ties ready, because what I like to do is I'd like to cut the factory zip ties right here, only because it gives me room to be able to move some of the factory plugs out the way. Like this one here, for example, it's right on top of it, so it basically keeps you from being able to unplug that one. So I take the zip tie off, and then I move these down just so that I can disconnect that plug. You gotta use two hands. You don't want to force it. Basically, it has a locking tab right over here, and that's what you're pushing to slide that plug out. So you want to be pretty gentle with it. So I'm going to put the phone down here. I can't see whether you're able to see what I'm doing or not. Hopefully you are able to. But this way I could use two hands to be able to come in here and slide this plug out. This big one in the back could get in the way. So what I might have to do is pull this one out of the way like this, so that I can then disconnect this plug completely out without disturbing it so much. So this plug and this plug that's included in that harness are the same ones. So the new one's gonna go in there, and the factory one's gonna plug into the other end, and the other end's gonna get routed to the back of our new radio. All right, so we are now looking at the factory plug disconnected. Remember, this bundle of wires came from this area over here. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna start with plugging in the new harness in here. I'm gonna bend this at a 90 degree so I can come in here and slide this plug into place. And I'm going to take the factory one, and what I'll end up doing with this one once it's connected to the new harness is I'm going to not fish it, but I'm going to feed this entire plug into this cavity right over here, just because I don't want it to be in front of the shroud, to where the shroud is going to have a hard time basically clipping to the top piece. So here is the other end of that harness, and I'm going to plug that in here like this. And so I'm going to feed this towards the back. And I'm going to put all of these harnesses back in place. Back in place right there. I still have enough room to fish the plug that's going to go towards the back underneath here. And so you could reach back here and feel, see, it's right here. So I'm basically just feeding that in there, and I'm gonna put this one in place soon as I can get all of this fed through here. And once I have everything in place, I'll go ahead and put a zip tie back in its place so that all these wires are back where they were originally, but now with this new T-harness in place. So I'm gonna push that in there. I might end up undoing some of that tape. Just so it could free my harness a little more. Not a whole lot, we just need a little bit to be able to feed this in this cavity, just like that, and then have all of our harnesses in place so that we can put a zip tie back in. Back in right here. Put the zip tie back in its place. Just like that. Snip the excess. And we'll still have our handle, which moves forward to be able to do this. I forgot this one here. So I'm just going to add another zip tie to keep this one tight in place right here. Bring this in right here. From the top down. Just like that. Now we can put our shroud back in place. We'll start by clipping one side. Alright, so there's this side. All right, and so there's both sides in place. We'll put the screws back in and we'll fish all of our excess wire to the back of the new radio. So right before routing our steering wheel control harness to where the radio is going to be mounted, I'm going to go ahead and take this panel out so that I can run my microphone wire. And I like to start by just pulling the rubber weather stripping out. What most guys will do, and be careful with this, is all they'll do is they'll pull this rubber weather stripping out. They will run the microphone wire through here and down. The problem with that is sometimes you have airbags behind these panels. And you don't want to be lazy and just do that. You want to take the panel off and you want to make sure that your wiring is mounted and routed. It's mounted and routed along the factory wiring. Because if you just go through here, now you have your microphone wire in the way of the driver's side curtain side airbag. You don't want to do that. You want to make sure that it's zip tied along with the factory wire harness, and then it drops down over there under the steering wheel column, and it goes across and eventually comes out behind where the new radio is going to go. What I like to do is I like to leave a little bit of slack for the microphone so that in case I'm going to be taping it to the windshield or using the clip to clip it onto this plastic panel, regardless of such, I like to leave a little bit of slack before I place my first zip tie in place. And you could see, you know, where I've done and I've added a couple zip ties. You don't need a million zip ties, but you want to keep the wiring in a safe spot in relationship to the airbag. You just want it out the way. So I did 3 up here, and then I did 1 more down at the bottom. And so in regards to the rest of the cable, what I normally do is I'll add and I'll use a long zip tie, and I'll drop this in this cavity, and then I'll see it come out on the bottom of the dash right over here, and that's where I will pull it. And since I still have this taken apart, I would then run that together with this steering wheel control harness and make it all come out here where the radio cavity is. And so now that I have the wire already around at the bottom, I'll put my plastic panel back on, and I would reinstall the weather stripping to make sure that's back in place. Now, a lot of people ask, can I use the factory microphone? You know, is that possible? And the answer is yes. You know, the only problem is when you use the factory mic, one, you have to find the wiring, whether it's behind the radio or from the top where the microphone is. You have to find the wires, and you then have to reconfigure the wiring on the factory microphone so that you have a 3.5 millimeter plug that you can plug it into the new radio. That's the first challenge. Second is every microphone is programmed with certain parameters depending upon what device is being used with. And depending on that, it could sound better, it can sound worse than the included mic. That's the second challenge. The third challenge is if you ever want to go back to factory, you then have to redo or undo what you did, redo the factory microphone wires so you could go back to factory. So you can, if you could do all those things. You know, some of us can, some of us cannot. Some of us can but will not. So it really depends on every situation. I always recommend use the included mic because at this point, if we tape it to the A-pillar up here, I mean, it's damn near invisible. You could put this in the factory microphone location to get creative. But then once the panels begin to rub on this as you're driving, it's gonna create unnecessary noise. So I always tell people, just keep it simple. Use the included mic. It'll make your life a lot easier. And just like the backup camera cable, there's really no right or wrong way of routing the cable underneath the steering wheel column. I'm just basically feeding my long zip tie from underneath the steering wheel column where my steering wheel control cables are, so that I can then do this. So here's my microphone with intact plug. And then I also taped the steering wheel harness to my microphone harness. So as I'm pulling one, I'm pulling both. And this is where all of my excess it's gonna be. And so now that I have both my microphone and the steering wheel control harness routed to the back where the new radio is gonna be, I'm still not gonna put any of these panels on the bottom back together yet. Disconnecting and reconnecting things here, that's the easy part. I think the biggest challenge you're gonna have is the backup camera, your steering wheel control harness, microphone, and then getting those harnesses, those plugs right back here. Now the very next step for this is for us to prep the main harness. Here we have the gray and green connectors. You also have a CAN box plug right over here. You have your SWC connector, which is the cable we ran from underneath the steering wheel column. This says speaker output. This is going to be the plug for our additional chime speaker. This one says most audio, just in case we're doing one with a BOSE amplified system. This one here says to radio connect. If you had this plug, this would be the IO3 camera output, which means you wouldn't have to go into the glove box to the HMI module back there to get your backup camera wire. You would get it directly from here, but this plug is not in this application. Other things you want to take into consideration is this other yellow RCA is your OnStar audio plug. This is gonna go to your light green OnStar audio. You could plug it into any one of these two, or you can use a Y cable from here to go into both of these, but you pick left or right side, whichever one. There's no right or wrong way of getting your OnStar audio from the car to the new radio. And so now that I have these additional wires here, brings me to my next topic is the wires, all the extra wires that are on the main harness, you're not going to use unless you're adding an amplifier. The orange wire labeled amp EN is your remote turn on. But since we're not adding any amplifiers in this case, what I like to do is I like to tape up all the wires, including the gel tips, so that there's no potential for any problems in the future, those wires shorting out. Same thing with all the extra wires that are on the additional harnesses, like this OnStar plug, like the power output on the camera cable. Basically tape them up and, you know, cover it with your gel tip so that these things don't have the potential to cause any problems in the future, because even when you're stuffing these harnesses back into the radio cavity, the gel tips can sometimes slide off and you don't see it, and then things begin to short out. Something doesn't work correctly. Now you're wondering what's going on. So it's just a preventive measure. Okay, so now that I have most of my wiring prepped, I like to keep all of my colored plugs in one bundle, just so that this makes it easier for me to make sure I don't forget anything when it comes down to plugging them into the radio. So I like to keep those together. I already have the two Climate Connect plug harness already plugged in. I'm just waiting for the CAN box module here and then to go into the new radio. I already have the steering wheel control harness here, which is going to plug into the main harness. I already have the chime speaker mounted. Basically, what you want to do is take a Clorox wipe or an alcohol prep pad, wipe the surface, dry it with a microfiber, peel the double-sided stick tape from the back of the chime speaker and stick it in there, and then your wiring is going to plug in there. Now this module up here is where all of my main harnesses are going to go. So this is my power speaker connectors right over here. This is my AM/FM antenna plug. This is going to be my most plug, and what we'll do is we'll grab that one and we should plug it in now, if I could find where it is. It's not that one. All right, let's just keep going. I'll find it in a little bit. And then here is the GPS, factory GPS antenna plug right up here. I'm going to use this right angle pig tool to squeeze the tab so I could then slide it out. Tabs on the top, plastic gets in the way, squeeze down and get it out. Okay, there it is. And so this module is being held by this plastic latch at the top. So with your thumb, you're going to lift up and slide it out, basically like this. And so I'd say pull it out, just because this is the area that I'm going to be using to mount my GPS, my Wi-Fi, and my 4G LTE antennas. So it gives you room for you to do all that with your antennas, and then down here is where all of the harnesses are going to get stuffed back in. So we want to start by basically preparing the surface here to make sure that our double-side stick tape on the antennas is going to catch very nicely. And so here we have all 4 of these, starting with the GPS antenna right in the middle towards the back. Next, I'm going to do the 2 4G LTE antennas right off to the side. One on each side. We'll start with this one. We'll put one here. Put the other one on the left side of the GPS antenna. And then last, we'll do our Wi-Fi antenna right along the front side, and that should take care of all 4 of our antennas, like this. So this is the area where I normally would use to put our antennas in there. Let me zip tie all the excess and then we'll get on with the rest of the connections. All right, so we have all of our antenna plugs routed here. This is all 4 of them. Found my most plug, which is not that one. It's this one right over here. It's gonna go into this gray plug. This is basically a jumper cable, jumper plug to maintain that data communication intact. Here we have the main power speaker connectors, your grays and greens. I should probably run these down towards the bottom. Yes. Okay. So there's these 2. And then you're not going to use the one labeled multi-camera power. We're not going to use the one labeled most audio output. We're going to be using the one that says OnStar Audio, which is going to go to either the left or right side. I'll pick the left side, plug it in there, and then off of this main harness, the only thing else we're going to use is our steering wheel control plug, which has the same wire colors, pink and black, like that. We're going to use our speaker output plug, which is right over here. And the only other box that we need here now is our CAN bus module, in addition to our AM FM antenna connector, which is this one here, right there. And so now the AC climate control plug over here is going to connect to one side of the CAN box. The main radio harness is gonna connect to the other side of the CAN box, just like that. And then so we're left with plugs into the back of the radio, plugs into the back of the radio, main plug into the back of the radio, antenna plugs into the back of the radio. I have the backup camera already plugged in, SWC, antennas. And so what I'm going to do next is I'm going to grab the radio, put it in my hands, and start making all of my connections while I start basically managing all these plugs and stuffing them back into here. Sorry, it's been a long video. So microfiber on my arm, put the screen right on it like this just to help it. And so I'm gonna hold it sideways so I can see all of my connections as I'm coming in, starting with the 4 antenna plugs. So the goal for us putting this video together is so that when you buy this radio and you receive it, you know exactly what to do with it. We want to make sure that you know all the details, that we didn't cut or edited anything out of the video. We want to make sure that you get to see everything, so that by the time you receive this radio, you're going to be able to install it as if you've basically have already done a few of these. And so that's the good part about doing something like this. So I now have all of my antennas plugged in. I'm going to now work on the colored plugs right over here. Again, starting with the off-white on the bottom. Now remember, I already have a SIM card in this radio, so I'm not gonna leave that in an easily accessible location. That's gonna stay buried back here, so that way it's not something that I have to worry about in the future. You can fast forward this part, or you can stay and watch me struggle. So it's up to you. I'm just making all of these connections into the back of the radio. Make sure that I don't miss anything. My OnStar plug. And then my gray plug right there. So now I have the black plug is next. All my antennas are in. All of the colored plugs are in. This is the AC climate control plug. That's gonna go to this side of the chassis. Right in there. And the only one that's left is the main plug, which is right over here. Pull that one out this way. Right over here. one's gonna go right in there. Okay. So now that everything is plugged in is where the fun begins. Luckily, we have enough room in here for all of our wires to basically get stuffed in there without stressing them so much. So that's what I like about this install, is the wires don't necessarily get stressed at all. So once that's in place, we can now begin to put the radio in place, and it basically just lines up with the screw holes. I'm gonna grab a couple and then just hand tighten them so that I can turn it on and make sure that we have basically power, climate controls, and we'll go over those settings so you can get an idea as to what that's like. All right, so I now have a couple of screws in place. I'm going to adjust my camera angle here. Again, unedited, raw footage, non-stop. So now, close the door. Let's get our key, which is right over here. We could now turn this on. Keys in the ignition. Open the door. You hear the chime speaker already coming through. Right off the bat, there's air already blowing out of the vents. We just need to get in there and double check to make sure that we have the right setting. So guys, this is part of our dedication to you. So this is nighttime. It looks like our time, as far as that goes, is already it's already on point. It looks like Google Maps is already finding a location because we're already connected to the 4G LTE network. The weather has already caught on. So now let's go ahead and check to make sure that our AC climate controls are set correctly. I'm not even going to bother with checking to make sure that they are working. From what I can tell, this shows me that it's in the lowest setting and there's air blowing. So that tells me that something is not set correctly. And if I press the power button, it turned on and it moved up one step. But if I turn it off, the vent speed goes down, but I can still feel air coming out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my home, swipe up, I'm going to go to settings, and I'm going to go to system, setting guide, car model AC. We're in a GM Silverado manual AC. Remember, this is not a manual AC climate controls. This is an auto, so we're going to select auto. It's going to ask us to confirm. I'm going to press OK. The unit is going to turn off and turn back on. I still feel air coming out. So this is just part of the process. And this is the extent of programming this unit. You're just telling it, hey, I have manual or auto AC controls. That's really all you're doing. So this unit is now booting up. And again, this is unedited raw footage. Don't forget that we include contact information should you have any questions or concerns. But we try and eliminate that with these long videos so that you could get all the information up front. So the unit has now rebooted. I'm going to come into my climate. I'm going to turn the power button on. So now it didn't turn on, it actually turned off. So now I have my power button is working. I have no more air. I could come in here, use soft touch buttons. Remember, multiple ways of doing one function. So I have fan up, fan down. I have fan up. I have fan down. I have temperature up. You can see my temperature down here. Temperature up, temperature down. So right now, it looks like it is in a dual temperature setting because this is set to 68 and this says low. So I'm gonna go to 60, so it looks like I can independently adjust the temperature. So then I'm gonna press the sync button and let's take a look and see what happens to the two temperatures. Press the sync button, it goes gray, and now both temperatures are set basically the same. So we now can confirm that our dual auto climate control is working. So I adjust temperature here, they're both adjusting, adjusted down, or here, up and down, they're both adjusting. My fan up, fan down is already working. Here is my AC button. I'm going to turn on the AC condenser and I can feel the temperature going down. If I adjust the passenger side only, then just like the factory, it basically turned on the dual zone temperature controls and the sync button changed color to blue, letting me know that it's now in auto dual zone. If I press the sync button, they're both gonna go to the passenger temperature setting. So this is the extent of climate controls, and the very first thing that you should check to make sure it's working. So now that we've got that working, the next step is gonna be to verify our steering wheel controls and the backup camera. So stay tuned for that. All right, so here we are. Let's go ahead and press the home button. I'm gonna turn up the volume up, volume down. I'm gonna now go to the radio and double check my preset up, preset down. I'm getting static, that's a good sign. Press and hold to seek. Okay, so I now have audio. 99.9 is where I want to go. Let's go to 99.9. Okay, so that's volume up, volume down. I'm gonna press the preset up, preset down buttons, and we should see this go from preset 1 to preset 2. So there it is, preset 2, and then preset down. So preset up, preset down is working, which is the same thing, track up, track down. So this is how you would test to make sure your volume and your steering wheel controls are working. So the next step would be our backup camera. I'm gonna press the brake, put it in reverse, and so this should be our backup camera image, which in fact, there it is. That's fully functional, and it looks a little better than the factory did. I mean, I have the, you know, brake lamps on, and we also have the active guidelines. So every time you turn the wheel, that's what happens. So guys, I think that as far as the installation goes, this is where we now start to put things back together. We verified that things are working. Our volume knob is working. Our tune knob is fully functional. Our mute button, things like that. Media to change sources. So I'm now in USB audio in, USB video in. This would be basically Bluetooth. So our media button's working. It looks like we are up and running, and the next step is to basically put things back together. I don't think you need a tutorial on how to put the glove box back together or how to put this panel back together. The only thing we're gonna do next before we put that back together is put the other screws and put the wings in place. Our wrap retained accessory power is fully functional until we open the driver's side door. The radio turns off. So one thing to make note of, one of the features and functions that these units are equipped with is a fast boot function, which means that once you get into the car, the time this unit takes from being off to turning on, basically there is no delay. It turns on right away. But as you could see, in the background, the unit is still on. Now, it doesn't stay on forever. It doesn't stay on for hours. Eventually, the back image will go to sleep and keep the fast boot function active. So this is how fast this unit would go from being off to turning on, just to give you an example. So the unit is now on and it's up and running. But that is the fast boot process. That is the fast boot function that these units are equipped with. And the only other thing that you noticed earlier was the back screen still has it's sort of on and in standby mode, but eventually that part does go to sleep. So let me turn this back off. Grab the wings and put them on. And so basically the wings have these locking tabs, and that's how it's going to lock itself onto the screen side, and that's how it's going to lock itself on the factory side. We're going to pull the plastic clips from the factory panel, put them in here, and then we'll be able to snap this into place. All right, so here we go. We've got the wings with the clips already in place. And these are fairly simple to remove. You just got to get a right angle pick tool, and you got to slowly pry them off. And then before you reinsert them onto these, make sure you bend the pins back into place so that they can catch. But they're fairly simple to remove. You just got to work at them. We have the passenger side right over here, and all you have to do at this point is line them up and snap them in place. But let's do the driver's side first, and you want to start with these right here, and then the ones that are going to attach to the radio. So these two clips, one's going to go there, one's going to go down here, And so starting at the corner, making sure that that's in place, and then you can snap that one in, and then you work the top same way, just like that. And now what we'll do is we'll go on the passenger side and do the same thing. All right, so here we have passenger side, clips in first, and then the last part is the side that snaps onto the radio. Just like that. All right, so these are the 3 USB cables that we routed from the back of the radio. Remember, the one labeled phone link is the one that you would use for wired Android Auto. CarPlay is only wireless. The other 2, one of them is your USB-A, just in case you have a thumb drive with music videos, movies, or music, you can plug it right into here. The other one that's labeled USB, this is gonna go to the USB plug that's on the HDMI module underneath the glove box. So it would be this cable right here, which was plugged into that plug right there. And this is to keep the factory USB ports still functional in regards to charging. So all you're gonna have to do is make these 2 connectors. As previously said, it's easier said than done with one hand, but that's where that's gonna plug in. This is the factory backup camera video signal, and then just find a nice spot to zip tie these things up here so that they're not, you know, in the way. And then you could get creative with these other 2 USB cables. You could get something that, you know, has a flush mount on the dash, and then the extension basically just plugs in on the back, or you can just leave them in the glove box. You know, with all the streaming applications nowadays, chances are you're gonna put them in the glove box and forget about them. You know, because the radio itself has got so many features, so many functions, that, you know, you forget about these USB inputs. But they're usable. You want to leave them in an easily accessible location, just in case you need to upload an update and it can't be done over the air. It needs to be loaded through a USB input. You want to have access to these. All right, so right after this, we can put the glove box back together. You saw how it came apart. I don't think you need to be part of the assembly process. So one of my favorite features about this particular unit is you don't have to worry about looking for a dash kit or a radio replacement wire harness, backup camera retention modules, steering wheel control replacement modules. You don't have to worry about any third-party interfaces. The only thing you do have to worry about in this particular model, the 14 through 18 Chevy Silverado GMC Sierra, is if your vehicle is equipped with the factory BOSE audio system, you don't have to replace the BOSE audio amplified system. You can keep function of it, but you will need a BOSE retention module. And guess what? We can facilitate that for you. So look out in the description. There will be a link so that you could see what the BOSE retention module looks like. But once again, one of my favorite features too is you don't lose your climate control hard buttons. You still keep your AC climate controls. You have your temperature up, temperature down hard buttons. So when you're driving, you could still reach for hard buttons. You could still reach for a volume knob. This is your mode button. This is what you use to control the ventilation mode. This is AC power on and off. This controls your fan speed on and off. This is your AC condenser on and off, your recirculation button, your front defrost, your rear defrost, and your fan speed up and down. Here you have a tune button. So if you happen to be listening to the radio, kind of like we are now, you can use this knob to tune up, tune down. You have your volume up, volume down here. You can also touch the screen and use this volume up and down. You can swipe down from the top and also control volume here. You can also control volume from your steering wheel controls. So there's many different ways to control any one given function. We'd like to leave that up to you to use it as you prefer to use it. So that's as far as the hard buttons that are on this new particular radio. You also have down here your AC climate controls. So that's going to also control that for you. So beyond having the hard buttons for climate controls, for volume, for tuning, let's go over some of the on-screen functions. For example, down over here, you're also going to have your dual temperature climate control settings. Remember, some of these vehicles come with manual single zone AC climate controls, and some of these vehicles come with dual zone, dual temperature climate control AC function. So one of the things that we need to do is we need to make sure that you're able to keep that. So right down here, we're going to have temperature control for driver, temperature control for passenger. Down over here, there's a button labeled climate. There's a button labeled AC. So AC on and off button, soft touch over here. AC on and off button, hard button over here. You also have your recirculation button, your mode button, your front defrost. That basically is doing the same thing that these buttons up here do. That's as far as your climate controls down at the bottom. If you notice, there's also a line of buttons right above your climate controls. But let's go and finish up with the climate controls too. If you hit the climate page, the climate button, you're going to get a brand new climate page. The mode button over here also does the same thing that the mode button does here. Here is where you would look at where the air is ventilating through. And you also have your auto AC, your recirculation button. The sync button over here will basically synchronize the two temperatures between driver and passenger. If you push it, then it synchronizes the temperature. If you start adjusting the passenger side temperature, it'll turn off the sync function, and that's where you'll be able to have independent climate controls. You could do fan speed up and down here. You can also do fan speed up and down right over here. Right now the car is off. Let me turn it on so I could show you. So once we get into this page, we press the climate button, and this is where you would control the mode so that you could see where you want the air to come through. So pressing the mode button will cycle through that, just like pressing the mode button here basically does that for you. Fan speed up, fan speed down, so you have the same control functions here. Your AC on and off basically controls that function right here. AC condenser on and off, max AC. If you notice right now, both temperatures are set to 68 degrees Fahrenheit. The minute I adjust the passenger side by itself and I start to go temperature up on the passenger side, the sync button comes on. That means you're in independent climate control functions. The passenger side stays at 68 degrees. The minute you press the sync button, the button goes gray or dark, and then they both now match. So this is as far as your climate controls. The beauty about this too is this climate control page, once you're adjusting it and you're still driving, you can make it so that it automatically times out. You can make it so that it's always there until you press the home button and bring your radio back to your home screen. Or what you could do is you can go into the settings under system. There's an option called factory settings. The code to get into those settings is 1660. And right over here, if you go to climate timeout, currently it's off. I can change it to 10 seconds so that when I'm in the climate control page and I'm making my adjustments, climate up and down, or let's just say I'm not in the climate page and I do adjust temperature up, temperature down, fan speed up, fan speed down. If I do hit the mode button, right, or if I hit the climate page and this page comes up as I want to see where it is that I am getting my airflow, where my fan speed is, I can make it so that 10 seconds later that page times out and it automatically goes back to my home screen. I really love that function about this radio because you can come in here, you can hit the climate button and you'll see where you are, but you don't have to manually go back to the home screen. You can keep driving and avoid any further distractions once you're in this page. Now let's keep moving up and let's talk about the rest of the screen layout. Right over here, you're going to have your weather, depending on whether you're connected to a Wi-Fi network or a SIM card cellular network connection, you can make it so that this page follows you from city to city, and it always updates the weather for you. Right to the side of that, this is going to be a window that gives you status of what you're playing, whether you're Apple CarPlay, Android Auto, whether you're playing a USB video input or music through your USB input. This is what's going to give you a status of what you're playing. Currently, the radio happens to be in AM FM, and that's kind of why you see this. So let me touch it, and it's going to take me to AM FM, and I'm just going to tune into a different radio station so you could see.
The whole family to enjoy.
So this is AM FM. Once you go back to the home screen, that's where that is. You can use the buttons that are on this window to change your presets up and down. Once you're in radio, the way you would store presets is you swipe up if that's the preset you want, just like you would on previous radios. You press and hold your preset to be able to do that. You could do a total of 18 presets, whether that is your 18 presets on FM. You can do 12 presets on AM, and right down here you can have a combination of 6 favorite presets. So you can have a mixture of FM presets down here. You can have AM presets down there as you wish. So you can go ahead and change those however you want. Right over here, that would be AM, FM. And so you'll have a mixture of different presets within AM and FM. Other than that, you're looking at this other half of the screen. This happens to be Google Maps. Again, if you're connected to a cellular network or a Wi-Fi hotspot, this is where you would do that. You can touch it and it'll take you directly to Google Maps, and this is where you would punch in any given destination. It wants you to sign in to have a better experience, but we're not going to do that right now. Back to the home screen right over here. So this is general layout of your home screen. We're going to talk about the audio functions right over here. These are audio sources. Audio sources, you can touch the media button to cycle and toggle between the different audio functions that the radio has. Kind of like an audio source button on your steering wheel controls. You have a mode button on your steering wheel controls that you can use to go through the different audio sources. So you can use the media button to cycle through the different audio sources. You can select your audio sources directly using the buttons right up here. This little sun here happens to be manual brightness control. You have 3 different options for brightness of the screen. Right now it's nighttime, so we have this will be the brightest setting. That'll be the dimmest, but you also have additional controls over brightness. We'll go over those in just a minute. But let's go over these buttons right over here. This would be your Google Maps button. This is going to be your USB audio input source. Right next to that is your Bluetooth phone function. This is where we're going to go to pair our iPhone for Apple CarPlay. This is where we're going to go to pair our Android phone for Android Auto. Right next to that, we're going to have your USB video input source. So if you have a USB stick with movies, music, these buttons right up here, those are the ones that you're going to use to access them. This one right over here basically takes you to your app page. Once you log into the Play Store and you begin to download more applications, this is going to start to fill in, and that's how you're going to access your applications. You can hit this button here, or you can swipe up and gain access to your apps like this. So remember, just multiple ways of doing any one given function. This button over here is your Apple CarPlay, Android Auto. One way you can tell that CarPlay is wireless and Android Auto is wireless and wired is when you push this button right over here. You'll notice that we are in CarPlay mode. It only shows a Bluetooth indicator. The minute we switch it over to Android Auto, it shows a Bluetooth symbol as well as a USB input symbol. So that's how you know that Android Auto is both wireless and wired. Apple CarPlay is only wireless. So moving up to the top, the last bar over here, you're going to have the same button that you have over here off to the right. That is brightness, manual brightness setting, Wi-Fi hotspot status indicator. You're going to have a 4G LTE connection signal there, signal strength right next to it once you are connected to a 4G LTE network. You have an outside temperature display. You're going to have date and you're going to have time. So that's it as far as the layout. Now, one cool feature that I like is the drop-down menu. It also duplicates the functions for you. So if you press these 4 squares, it's like pressing these 4 squares, which will take you to all of your apps. So if you touch it, there's your apps, right? If you're in the home screen, you press this button, there goes to your apps. If you swipe up, it goes to your apps. So it's whatever you like. The idea here is to have options. So you swipe down, you get that. Right over here, remember we have volume, but we also have volume over here. You saw brightness over there. You also have a brightness indicator here. And so you can control that. Now, what if you're listening to your music, but you want to black out the screen? That's what this button right next to your brightness setting does. This button here basically blacks out the screen, even though it's still on. All you have to do is touch it so that it comes back on. This button right over here is going to take you directly into your mobile network connections. This is where you would turn on your mobile data function. This is where you would do that. And so this takes you directly into there. The other buttons right next to that, for example, right over here, this button is your also gonna take you into Wi-Fi functions. Right next to that button, you can screenshot the main screen that's on the radio. So whatever you have on there, if you want to screenshot it, you touch it, it's gonna snap a picture of your screen and save it into the internal files or internal memory that this unit has. You're also going to be able to press this button, which is going to open up all of the different applications that you have running. That's the same as pressing this button right over here. So remember, multiple ways of doing any given function. So you have quick access to different things. The home button here is the same thing as the home button there. Airplane mode is airplane mode like we all know it. It basically turns off Bluetooth, network connections, Wi-Fi, everything else. This is direct access to your Wi-Fi hotspot connection. So if you press and hold it, it's going to take you to Wi-Fi. This is where you turn it on, and this is where you would search for Wi-Fi hotspot from your phone or from wherever else you want to go through and connect your Wi-Fi hotspot through there. But other than that, I mean, one of the things that I like is how quickly this unit responds. I mean, there's no lag time. We can go through different functions, different settings, and we're always going to be able to have the unit respond to us in a quick manner. That's my favorite thing is that there is no lag time, right? You're driving, you need to reach for a function, you need to turn on a certain feature. You could do that right away. If you're driving and you're listening to the music and you want to mute it quickly, boom, there's your mute button right there. Or if you prefer to mute it by using the screen when the volume is up, all you have to do is press the speaker and it's going to mute for you, turn the volume back up like this. So I really like how responsive, how quick this unit moves. That's one of my favorite features. So what I've done is I plugged in a USB memory stick where I keep a few music videos just that I use for normal testing. And I'll show you basically how the video input works. As you could tell, I was already playing it. It says video. It has a couple of artist names on here. I don't have any music files in there, so if I touch it, it's not gonna give me access to any music specifically. This would be the button that I would press to look for music files. I don't have any music files on there, so the USB input music app isn't gonna do anything for me. But the video music application is gonna take me to the very first video that I have on my USB stick. So as you could see, this would be one of the music videos that I have on there, right? And so one cool thing that I like is I can press the home button. I could go to my Google Maps and I could be still listening to my music video in the background. I can change the music video by using the track up and down buttons that are on here, so I can go to my next screen. And if I want to see it, I simply touch it and it's going to take me directly to my music video. If I want to search for music video lists that I have on there, it's the same button right over here. All I have to do is touch it right here and it's going to take me right into USB storage. So this happens to be basically 5 different music videos that I have on there, and that's how I would go about listening to the music videos that I have on my USB inputs. I really like this feature because, you know, if all else fails, if I'm tired of CarPlay, if I'm tired, I want to be able to put my own music files on there and you know, drive that or listen to that as many times as I want without having to worry about any data connection. So that's one of the things that I really enjoy about this. So then I'll go back to the home screen and I can still continue to listen to it. So that is the USB video input, USB music input. Some of the things that we're going to be going over next is the screen brightness dimming. How do you control that? How does it work during the day? How does it work during the night? Let me go ahead and show that to you. So as far as dimness, as far as brightness, this happens to be day mode. I know that we talked about brightness settings. I know that we talked about dimming control here, but that's just 50% of it. The other percent of brightness settings is going to be in your settings under general, under day and night mode. This is where you can set it to auto. Auto means that the headlight status, whether they're on or off, is what's going to control the brightness of the radio, or the day-night mode function of the radio. If I set it to day, it's going to always stay like this regardless of what the headlights are doing. But if I come in here and I touch day and night mode and I go to night mode, it'll always be in this dark night mode, which is fine for some people. You know, I personally like the automatic function, so I like setting it to auto. For example, right now, my headlights are off. I'm gonna go ahead and turn them on. You'll notice that the screen will go into night mode and the buttons on my panel will also light up. So this is now night mode as far as the headlights go. Headlights are on. The unit is in night mode. The buttons are now lit. And so another thing that you have is here, dimmer. You can tell this unit how bright you want it during the day or how bright you want it during the night. So that during daytime, I'm gonna turn my lights off. It'll be obviously with a white background and it'll be this bright. Well, during the day, you can have it set so that it's a little dimmer. So what I'm gonna do next is I'm turning the headlights on. It's gonna go to night mode. The screen will dim to this brightness setting. So now if I'm in my home screen, you know, my background is dark. The USB input is now black all the way around. My Apple CarPlay, Android Auto would be in night mode. And so that's one of the cool things that I really like about this unit. But not just that. I'm gonna go to manual brightness in night mode and make it brighter. I really wanna show you the eye comfort setting. So at night, we have this thing called night light inside of your settings under system. Down here under Android settings, we have this option here called display, and it's called night light. What you do is you go here, you can turn it on, and what this does is it gives you this yellow tint, kind of like what iOS devices have, eye comfort setting. You can turn it on, you can tell it how much of that yellow tint you want, how little of it you want. Let me turn night mode off. I'm gonna turn my headlights off just so you could see that yellow tint on the white background better. So you can turn it on manually and have it on all the time if that's what you like. You can tell it how much of that yellow tint you want or how little of that yellow tint you want. And what this does is it makes looking at this screen at night that much more comfortable. Under schedule, you can start with setting it, and under schedule, you can tell it so that it turns on at night and off in the morning. So it'll go from sunset to sunrise. So at that point, it's scheduled, and you can tell it how much of it you want depending on your preference. So I really like this feature because, again, it makes looking at the screen that much more comfortable. It is easier on your eyes if you eliminate the blue light from the screen at night especially. So I really like that function. All right, so what we're gonna do next is we're gonna go over Apple CarPlay, Android Auto. What I have here is an iPhone, and what I'm gonna do is before you get into Bluetooth pairing, what I want you to do is open up your Car Auto application. Inside of this application, there's a hexagon right over here. This is where you tell Car Auto or CarPlay to automatically connect every time you start the car and the radio turns on. Or if you have this off, what's gonna happen is your phone is gonna connect to Bluetooth, but CarPlay or Android Auto will not launch because you have it set up so that it doesn't automatically boot, so that it doesn't automatically connect. So Bluetooth will be connected, your calls will come in, and Bluetooth will pick it up until you manually launch the Car Auto application. At that point, CarPlay will take over. So let me start by making sure that this allow auto boot function is in the on position. I'm gonna press this button to kill all the applications that I have running. And what I'm gonna do next is I'm gonna go to Bluetooth. You can have it and do it two different ways. You can go straight to this button, or you can go straight to your Bluetooth icon right there. So once you're in Bluetooth, this button with the chain link off to the right is what you're gonna press to select pair new device. Once you're searching for new devices, the radio will come up on my phone, or my phone will come up on the radio. So now both devices are searching for Bluetooth. Neither one of them has found each other yet. D, actually it was already in one of my previously paired devices. Let me delete it from my phone, forget that device. Now it's searching for it. At this point, I may see it here. Let me go back and then just select pair new device, F6D8. Let me go back out of Bluetooth, go back in, and pair one more time. So there it is, F6D8. I'm going to select the radio from my phone. Now my phone shows up on the radio. I'm going to select pair, hit allow for contacts. Now Car Auto, which is my CarPlay application, launches. My phone is asking me if I want to use CarPlay. Say use CarPlay. So now you'll see the CarPlay application show up on the radio. It usually takes a few seconds for everything to synchronize wirelessly, but this happens to be CarPlay in all of its glory. It happens to be in night mode because of what time it is. CarPlay knows, so it gives you that dark mode. Here is everything as far as CarPlay is concerned. I do have Waze. I do have YouTube Music. So I subscribe to YouTube Premium, so I have my music application here. So I could come in here and listen to basically, all my music files like this. So then let me just kind of, switch songs. So this happens to be one of the playlists that I have on my phone. Okay, and so then the next one would be the mapping. So notice I went from day to night. So this is everything that has to do with Apple CarPlay, and that's basically how it works. One of the cool things I also like about Apple CarPlay obviously is the YouTube Music and everything else, but mapping on a screen this size is very impressive. That's my favorite part about this whole thing, is the Apple CarPlay functionality. I mean, if you're a Waze fan, I'm not. I haven't used this app in a really long time, but there's Waze. If you want to use Google Maps instead of Apple Maps, there you are. So it's really up to you, but I really like how impressive Apple CarPlay is in a 13-inch screen like this. Next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to disconnect my iPhone from here, and I'm going to connect a Samsung phone. And the way that I'll do that is I'll come in here and I will start with deleting the radio from my phone. So forget this device, forget that device. All right, so what I have here is a Samsung Galaxy. I'm gonna switch it from CarPlay to Android Auto, and I'm gonna then make sure that in my hexagon I'm selected to allow auto boot. And next I'm gonna go into the Bluetooth app, select the chain link button. I'm gonna select, it looks like it's already searching for new devices. I'm gonna go into Bluetooth on the radio. My phone already came up on the screen. I'm gonna select it. The phone is asking me if I want to pair with it. I selected yes. Once it's connected to phone and calls, it wants me to allow access to contacts. I select allow, and now Android Auto is going to automatically launch on the radio. The time that this takes to connect really has to do with each individual phone. We have no control over that. Once Android Auto or Apple CarPlay is connected, it's going to load up the information as fast as it wants to load it. But this is Android Auto in all of its glory as well. This is everything that has to do with Android Auto. So your phone function, your recent calls, everything else is going to be there. Your map, if you touch it, there it is. Let me go into map here so that the map drops all the way over here. You press this button. You guys are all very familiar with Android Auto, and that's basically how easy it is to have Apple CarPlay, Android Auto on a 13-inch screen of this size. Again, regardless of which one you are or which one you like, it's all personal preference, and either one is just as impressive as the other one. So one of the other cool features that I like about this unit is the built-in DSP app that it has. We used to call it bass treble settings. That's where you control your balance, your fader, your bass, your treble, right? But one of the things that I really like is that there's more to it now, guys. It's not just bass and treble anymore. You're gonna have a full-blown EQ. So from your apps page, what you want to do is you want to come in here and you want to select the DSP app, and that's going to bring you into your EQ. You can change it to however you like, your own personal preference. Once you change it and adjust it, you can save, and I select custom one, so I can save it there. Let me turn the lights off just so you could see it in white. Let me do this here. All right, so then the DSP app actually is dark like this. So that's why my settings, this is in day mode. The radio, if I said it's a day mode, my audio, my EQ happens to be a black page. That's normal. So we can preset our EQ settings. I saved it to custom number 1, hit save. So now that's where I'm at. It has presets for EQ. You can adjust it and change it according to your personal preference. More bass, more mids, more highs. It's up to you. Swipe over to the left. This is if you are using the subwoofer output to add an additional sub amp for some subwoofers. You're gonna be able to control the passive crossover for your subwoofer output. You can tell it how soft you want it depending on the frequency, or how hard you want it to hit, and this would be your subwoofer gain control specifically for your subwoofer output. This is going to control your mids. This is going to control your door speakers and your tweeters. This is your mid bandpass filter. This is active crossover settings for low, mids, and highs. This is going to be your high crossover setting. This is where you're going to tell it where to stay between 6,000 and 22,000 hertz, from 20 hertz all the way to 680 hertz. So you have a pretty wide range of frequency adjustments on it. The other one is time delay for staging. I mean, if it's a bunch of people in here, I'll probably have my stage in the middle. If I'm here by myself, so that the sound sounds more like it's in the driver's seat, so that all the speakers are adjusting themselves so that each speaker sends out a wave at different times to reach my ears because of the distance of where every speaker is. This is where you can set the stage. If it's two of us, passenger and driver in the car, I might set the stage to be more towards the front, right in the center, where I can put my stage right in the center. And again, guys, I mean, this opens itself up to be able to add aftermarket amplifiers. I mean, when it comes to an aftermarket radio, you do it because you're trying to expand upon the in-car entertainment experience. What's an aftermarket radio if it doesn't have preamp RCA outputs? If you're looking for an aftermarket radio, ask, does it have preamp RCA outputs? 80% of these aftermarket radios that promise a big screen don't have RCA outputs. You can add aftermarket amplifiers. You don't have a built-in preamp out. You don't have a Toslink fiber optic output. So if you swipe over to the left over here, this is independent gain controls for your front left, front right, rear left, rear right. If you happen to have the factory BOSE system and you're using the BOSE module, you're only going to be using 2 of these 4 channels. So you're not going to have fader, you're only going to have balance, and that's just the nature of the beast. I mean, it's either that or bypass your BOSE amplifier, replace your BOSE speakers, but that is so that you can keep the factory BOSE amp and speakers with an aftermarket radio like this using the BOSE retention module. And that's it for the built-in DSP. So something else that makes this unit very unique is how it integrates into the vehicle. It's not just the fit and finish. It's not the steering wheel controls for audio, track up and down. It's not just that. Remember, your factory radio had vehicle control functions. So inside of that, when you replace the radio, your vehicle control functions are now gone. But if you look inside of the apps, there's something that makes this unit very unique, and this is how this unit integrates to the car. You have an app called Car Settings. So in here, this is all the factory vehicle control functions that your factory radio had. So this is where you're gonna find all those settings, all those functions. Again, it's not just the fit and finish, or it looks cool, oh, my climate control still works. It's also what happened to the functions that my radio had the ability to control. You'll notice that this particular panel has these blanks. That's because this vehicle was not factory equipped with heated and cooled seats. If this vehicle was equipped with heated and cooled seats, these side panels just pop out, these blanks just pop out, and this is where those control buttons would reinsert, and the plugs behind them would simply just reconnect. But that's as far as what makes this vehicle unique and how does it integrate into the car. And this is the main feature, the main function. And so last but not least, we could talk about other features and functions that the radio has. Yes, there is an HDMI input function, but you require a separate module for it. Reach out to us, we will help you get one. As far as HDMI out, just in case you want to hook up external monitors to this unit, there is an onboard HDMI output on it that you can use for that. Other than that, hopefully you found this video very informational. Ultimately, that's the goal.